Welcome to episode 119 of The Balancing Act. I have a very special guest. To me, any of the Toltec guests, anybody that I met in Teotihuacan is a special guest to me. That was uh, special. Just any word feels like short of that experience. Magical. It's still with me in my heart. Even now, strong. It hasn't really dissipated in 8 months or whatever it's been. Um, so anyhow, I wanted to hear your story. As a Toltec apprentice or practitioner, we are aware that stories are really just stories, but they do also kind of operate as our subconscious programming. But the awareness that we are the author of our story is such a liberating feeling and experience. At the same time, I'm really interested in hearing other people's stories. I think it's the most human way of connecting with others.
Yeah, I agree. And every trip is amazing. I remember that trip. And that if it was this past January, it's amazing. And it's every single time I go there, it's the same place, but every time I go there, it's a completely new experience. And people have asked me recently, do you still get something out of it? Do you still learn something from going so many times? And the answer is always yes. It's like I'm always encountering the moment. It's always present in the moment. And there's always something to encounter, to learn, to be inspired by. And every conversation is like asking a painter, do you ever get bored painting? How could you ever get bored expressing yourself? And that's the thing. It's like we're always expressing something in this moment. And so yeah, and the thing about stories is yeah, we all have our own personal story. And that personal story, yes, it comes from everywhere. Our parents, our mom has a story about us. Our dad has a story about us. They reflect us differently. Our grandparents have stories. Our great grandparents taught our grandparents, and which taught our parents. It's like the story is coming from everywhere. And there's a part of us that takes that story and then builds upon it, and everyone's story is different. And the thing I was thinking about is like I have a personal story, and it's just that. It's just a story. But if you ask my dad, his story about me is totally different than my mom's story about me or my sister's story about me. So is my story really true? It might be true for me because it's my experience, but it doesn't mean the story is true. We have so many different perspectives of, an event, a moment, an experience. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And when you bring the word truth into it, it makes me think of the present moment versus the past. It's like the past is not no longer the truth. We have our story about the past, and everybody's going to have different perceptions on that. But if you really want to get at the nitty gritty of truth, it's just this moment. Even as I'm speaking these words, if you're really in the moment, they're just sounds. If you don't know English, you're just hearing tones and not able to decode it because you don't have this program, this learned program to be able to decode the symbols that I'm speaking right now. So, really immersing yourself in the moment is the only way to access truth. And that's in the heart, it's in your blood, it's just in the experience. I still find this joy in sharing experiences in whatever way I can. If I'm in Mexico and I'm talking to somebody who doesn't speak English as well, I'm still going to put on a smiling face, give them my heart, and do my best to figure out what it is that we're trying to get from each other, and I feel like if you approach that with respect at a minimum and love at a not a maximum, but as a default state, let's say, you're going to get better results than if you're scared or unwilling to bond or connect with others.
For sure. And the thing is, like, everyone experiences anxiety or nervousness or confronts, past traumas or triggers. And the thing is not to be afraid to the point where you don't take action. And you can stand in the face of that fear or stand in the face of having a language barrier and still be present and still feel and still communicate, like you say. And that's
Yeah.
the beautiful part. And
Yeah.
some of the most beautiful masters I've seen have a command of both, a command of presence, that they know what they are. There's no doubt about what they are. And at the same time, they understand language so well that they can put that feeling into words in such a way that just captivates a listener.
A
It's
clean
beautiful.
mirror.
It's beautiful to witness. It's absolutely beautiful to witness. I mean, great storytellers, great poets, great artists. dancers, anyone that expresses and communicates. And I've always seen there's artists that are just they're wildly present and they have such a strong presence, but they don't necessarily have the master technique. They haven't put in the time or the discipline to learn like the technique. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there's artists that have amazing technique. They can paint a tree that looks exactly like a tree, photorealism, but there's something missing. There's no emotion. There's no presence to it. But then you come across someone that does both, that can communicate so clearly and it like penetrates everything. And you see that once in a while. You see someone that has the ability just to communicate that directly and that specifically. It's just absolutely just awe-inspiring, when you come across something like that.
And you can feel it for sure.
You can feel it for sure. It
Yeah.
inspires you. It knocks you over. Sometimes it scares you because you feel something like that clear that it sort of takes away everything that's in your way and you just feel that presence. And it's beautiful. Sometimes you see a work of art and it just makes you cry. And sometimes you're crying because it's so beautiful. And sometimes it's crying because it's telling you something personal that, this thing that you're hung up on, it's not real. And that tear is like a release, or the tear is forgiveness, or the tear is acceptance, or sometimes you're just witnessing something so beautiful. You don't know how to respond except, just cry at just something so beautiful. And it lets you know that you can do that too. And there's so many times that I felt that I've seen something so beautiful and it seemed so far away. But then I realized the only thing in our way is our own self-doubt. We sometimes don't believe ourselves, in ourselves. We believe all the stories that say, I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not talented enough, whatever it is. Even if it's a tiny little belief, all it takes is just a little tiny stone, and it creates
The
enough
parasite is
self-doubt.
deceptive. It's got
For
sneaky
sure.
ways of getting in there. Um, One thing as you were speaking just then, it reminded me of uh, on one of my trips to Mexico, I was reading The Alchemist on the plane on the way there. And in The Alchemist, he talks about learning to read the signs and the omens and the synchronicities and the language beyond words. And I do love working and cultivating and becoming sharper with that aspect of myself, my presence, my intuition, what the Toltecs might call the silent knowledge.
Mhm.
At the same time, I live by the four agreements. The first agreement is be impeccable with your word and recognizing the power of your word and the importance of words. So it's not like I'm over weighing the importance of the language beyond words. I do feel a necessity really to master both because that's balance. And I really am all about balance. And if you're in balance in either direction, I feel like it can just pull you off of that heart-centered track, I guess.
Hmm. For sure. I think at the heart of being impeccable, because I've thought about this and it's kind of articulate. It's kind of hard to articulate sometimes because it's just a feeling. It's a feeling.
Right.
It's like, how do you
It's
describe
like I
something that
want to be
has
so
meaning?
sharp with my description of this indescribable, ineffable, miraculous life force, God, consciousness, nature,
For
whatever
sure.
you want to call it. It's so amazing. And to try to put that feeling into words, as you said, it's
Right.
incredibly difficult, if not impossible. But I
Well, I like
still
to,
feel it's important to try.
yeah, for sure. And that's what we do. I mean, we're all artists, whether we believe it or not. And it's a lot of people have always said, I'm not an artist. I don't know how to paint. I never learned how to write. I don't have a creative bone in my body. And it's like, it's not true. Every time you open your mouth to say something, you're creating. Every time you say something to yourself, you're creating. Every time you make a choice, you're creating. You're creating the experience of your life. You're creating this interaction. You're talking to someone. Everything you say, everything you feel, everything you express is part of your creation. And you can create a lot of sort of barbs and sharp edges around you. Or you can create something that's like peaceful to be around. You can create nervousness and anxiety for someone else, or you can create peace for someone else. I mean, we all choose how we're interacting with the world, and it has everything to do with how we feel about ourselves. And so, in myself, and I think all ourselves, there's a place that feels like we're totally centered. It just, we feel grounded. We feel ourselves. We feel connected to something larger than ourselves. And all it takes is this little tiny thing to knock us off center. But when you're totally centered, there's this feeling that's indescribable. It's like you're connected to something so much larger than yourself, and you realize that there's this energy inside of you and this energy outside of you, and they're the same. But otherwise, when you're a little off center, you feel separate. You start listening to all the noise in our head, and we're trying to use our thoughts to get us back on center. But those thoughts are just like a pinball machine knocking us around. And it's like a moment of surrender where we sort of let ourselves get back to center. That we have that feeling. But so often we're trying so hard to get us to center. We're not letting it happen. And it goes back to your point about silent knowledge. It's like that instinct. It's the intuitive side of ourselves that just knows what to do. I am at a place where I know I've known my whole life what I need to do, but I've been in my own way the whole time, trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
I've been the one in the way. And we search for answers, we seek help, and all the help says the same thing. Get out of your own way. But how? How do I get out of my own way? That's the question everyone asks. But the thing is, you know your story, you know what's in the way, you know what you're afraid of, you know the mountain you have to climb, but we tell ourselves it's too hard or I can't do it. And then
Yeah.
you do it and you realize, hey, I knew how to do that the whole time. I just didn't do it.
Yeah. And one thing, at least on a personal level for me, sometimes I zoom too far out and I see the whole mountain and I'm like, ugh, and it's like a feeling of overwhelm. But if you just take it one step at a time, you're eventually going to get there. You can't allow the overwhelm to, like you mentioned earlier, not take action. You still
Right.
got to take that first step. You got to take the second step. And as long as you're taking steps toward that mountain, metaphorical mountain peak, you're going to get there.
Right.
Um, so
Well, it's
yeah,
true, but it goes back to like results versus process. Sometimes we see the mountain and we're overwhelmed because we're looking at the finish line
right,
and we're not focused on whatever obstacles in front of us. And so we're so focused on finishing that we trip over like the tiny little stone that's in front of us because we're not paying attention. We're not aware. We're obsessed. We're
right.
obsessed with the goal. We're obsessed with being the one to climb the mountain. We're obsessed with people seeing us climb the mountain.
Mhm.
But if we forget about that and we're just say, is there really a mountain to climb? We tell ourselves there is,
Right,
but
right,
part of climbing the mountain is just living your life and
right.
living your life. Everyone lives their life with different goals, like, someone at 9 years old could say, I want to be a doctor. And they just know, I want to be a doctor. And every choice they make is taking them towards being a doctor and become the best doctor that they can imagine. Some people say, hey, I want to be a painter and everything goes but some people don't know what they want to do and they feel like they're floundering, looking for answers. But sometimes the answers they're looking for is just they're trying to overcome some insecurity or they felt like they were told what they needed to be, but they don't want that. And so they feel conflicted that they don't know what they want. And sometimes we have to uncover all the ideas of who we were supposed to be in life, what we're supposed to do in life, what someone told us I needed to be in life. And yes, that might guide us, but at a certain point, the story stops guiding us and our passion takes over, our love takes over, our desire to experience something that fulfills us takes over. And maybe we do the same thing. Maybe we're still a doctor. Maybe we pivot and try something else, but we start to follow something that feels real as opposed to following this obsession that I have to do this in order to get whatever idea of a reward at the end, because sometimes the reward never comes and we feel disappointed and say, well, what did I spend my time doing?
Yeah. And
So,
again, it really what I said relates to what we said right before that thought of looking at the mountain peak and then feeling that overwhelm, that's the moment where you came off center or I came off center. And that's, that's exactly what you had
For sure.
described right before that.
I
Um,
had this. Oh, go ahead.
no, yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I remember this dream I had it's a long time ago, but it was one of those dreams that just stayed with me forever. And in that dream, uh, I was I woke up on a desert, and you know, Don Miguel was there. He's like, "Hey, come for a ride." I was like, "Okay," and I got in the car with him. Maybe you heard this story, I don't know,
Mm-mm.
but we're in the car. He looks at me, he smiles. He's like, "You ready?" And I was like, "For what?" And he slams on the gas, and we start like driving so fast towards this mountain. And I was in the back seat, and there was an apprentice in the front seat, and another one in the back seat, and we're just flying full speed, full throttle towards this mountain. It's getting closer and closer, and I start to think like, what's going to happen? Like, is he going to crash into this mountain? And I didn't know, and I sort of just was preparing for impact. And as soon as we got just inches away, these two hooks came down and pulled the car, and we like perfectly went up the side of the mountain. And I couldn't believe it was so smooth. Of course, it's a dream, but we're going up, and I see him tilt his hat down. He leans back, puts his feet up on the dashboard, and like closes his eyes. And I look out the window, and I saw billions of people with pickaxes driving their pickaxes into the wall, pulling themselves up. Just everyone doing their best to get to the top of this mountain. Some are sliding down, they're sweaty, bleeding, and just like boom, boom, just slowly grinding their way to the top. And
Uh-huh.
look, I don't see anyone at the top. There's no one there. There's some that are getting close, sliding down, getting close. And I look to show him, but he's like asleep. And we get to the top of the mountain, and these two like muscle men like pull the car on top of the mountaintop, open the doors for us. We get out, and we're the only like four people at the top. And the two other apprentices disappeared, and Miguel's like, "You see all those people? They're all trying to get to the top of the mountain. They don't even know what's at the top. They don't even know what's there. They were told they had to climb the mountain, so they're all climbing it, but no one knows how to get to the top. And they're just doing the same thing everyone else has done with a pickaxe. And I wanted to show you how I dream, to show you that you don't have to struggle. Life doesn't have to be a painful struggle. You find your way of climbing the mountain. And when you're faced with an obstacle in your life, I don't want you to rely on what someone else told you to do. I want you to trust yourself and find your own solution to that problem." And then he disappeared, and I woke up. And it was such a crazy dream because it was so real that someone's like, "I just want to show you how I dream, to show you that this is a dream right now. And look, I can dream us to the top in this dream. You don't have to dream about struggling. You struggle because you tell yourself life is a struggle. You tell yourself you're not good enough. You tell yourself you're not whatever talented enough. And because you believe that, you create struggle. You create conflict. You create obstacles. But if you didn't believe those things, life wouldn't be a struggle. You would enjoy every obstacle. Like when you have an empty canvas, you could be overwhelmed by not having an idea and not paint that day. Or you can pick up the brush and just start being creative and something will develop. Sometimes you have an inspiration and you go and paint it. You don't know, but if you talk yourself out of it, you're always going to fail. So that's what I heard in that dream. And it was powerful. And I think that applies to all of us. It's like you're dreaming your life. Everyone's dreaming their life. And we put limitations on ourselves. And when we
That's
take the limitations off, anything becomes available. Some things are easier, some things are challenging. Sometimes we have to learn a whole new language. If we decide to move to Italy, we have to learn a new language. It's not always easy, but it doesn't mean it has to be a struggle.
right. And to me, as I'm digesting that, to me, that's a beautiful illustration of the importance of what I call mindset. And I think that the simplest definition, and I got this from a friend of mine, Mark England, simplicity is what I think is best when it comes to trying to define words and language and stuff like that. And he says that mindset is simply the story you tell yourself. And that can be about yourself, about the world around you, about other people, but that's your mindset. And just as you were talking about, they are struggling because they tell themselves they have to struggle. That's the story that they're telling themselves about the world. And that's why, people, I feel like there's this movement or this recognition of the importance of mindset. Yet, if you ask people to define mindset, you'll notice most of them have this kind of fuzzy idea of what it is. I love his definition because, first of all, it maps right onto Toltec wisdom, but it's simple. It's literally like the story that you tell yourself is the programming that you're operating on. It's the relationship between your beliefs and your behavior, which I want to get to. But let's take one step back and get to your story. Well, we've talked about stories a lot, but I want to hear your story. Where did you grow up? Did you play sports growing up? Did you have a religious upbringing? All about it.
All the above. Uh, I grew up in Los Angeles. Well, actually, I was born on an Air Force base because my dad was in the Air Force,
Mm-hmm.
and then we moved to Los Angeles. And I love sports. I was very athletic, and that was one of the things I learned the most from growing up was athletics. And but I think part of my identity came a lot through just my grandmother. She was a survivor of Auschwitz, and the thing that meant the most to me was her presence in my life. She was such this like Tasmanian devil of passion. She savored every single moment of life. Every time she saw me, she lit up. She gave me the biggest hug. She was always encouraging, always wanted us to be happy. She just exuded this like gratitude to be alive. And when I learned more about her personal story and the things that she saw and experienced, it just became even more profound. Like, how did someone that went through that become this such a staple of love in my life? And so I think a lot of the conflicts in me probably came from, you know, that kind of fear of experiencing, that experience. But it's just a story, it's just a story. And but I remember growing up always being afraid of things, always afraid of how someone perceived me, always afraid of how someone was going to judge me, always afraid of everything I did, is it going to have a consequence? And I don't know where that came from. I started to tell myself maybe it's passed down from that fear of hiding, of wanting to hide, of being afraid. I have no idea. But at a certain point, I remember developing this mantra in my head. I would just repeat the word safe, safe in my head all the time. And then I started to create like this OCD sort of thing where I would walk inside of rooms 4 times to feel safe. I would tie my shoe 3 times, like full on this mental exercise just to sort of create this idea of safety. And at a certain point, that became more important than just being present. I was just doing that constantly. It was driving me crazy. The only time it didn't exist is with sports. I remember I would play tennis and had this like 120-mile-an-hour serve. And I remember it would just, you know, I don't even know how I did it. I remember serving and I remember asking myself, like, who's doing this? Like, I don't even know how this is possible. It's like, how am I so good at doing this without even thinking? And I realized that with sports, I was so focused on playing the sport that there was no space left to think, that there was no sort of OCD behaviors in
Mm-hmm.
sports. And that sort of really captivated my attention, that sports became sort of the place where I could play, where I could feel free. And I became so good because I just wanted to put all my attention there. And it
Mm-hmm.
was really liberating and freeing. But I remember one experience as a kid looking in the mirror and I looked at my eyes And in those eyes, something like amazing happened. It was like I felt this like feeling starting to grow inside of me. And I felt that I came from somewhere else. I don't know where, but I felt I existed before this body. And it created this sensation inside of me, this like energy. And I realized I was energy inside and was energy outside, and there was no difference. Like I really had this beautiful experience. And I still remember the feeling. There was this gratitude. And I was like, oh my God, I'm alive. Like I'm in a body. Like I'm alive. I could have been a rock. I could have been a bug. I could have been a leaf or a cloud, but like I'm this. It was like such a beautiful moment to realize that I'm alive. And I remember looking at my fingers and I moved them without thinking. It's like, oh my God, like there's a force inside of me that's controlling everything. And I'm that force. And it just rocketed me into this like immense presence with myself. And I remember going to my dad and saying, look, you'll never believe this. I can move my fingers without thinking about it. And I was probably 9 years old. And he was like, well, yeah, everyone can do that. And when he said that, I realized, oh, like this isn't that great of a revelation. This is like something like you sort of learn as a kid, and then so he's way past this. Wow, he must be really advanced because so then I realized, okay, it created like a little doubt in my experience that it wasn't that big of a deal.
Mm.
And I remember going to the bathroom still feeling it. And the voice in my head says, which one is real? This force that you feel, or this voice knows your name, knows where you live. It can describe what just happened. It knows everything about you. It can describe everything. How can that not be the real thing? And I didn't know the answer. So I said, I don't know what to tell myself. So I realized, why don't I just start watching people? Since everyone else probably already had this experience, I'll study people and learn about who I am and how to navigate this. And I started watching people's reactions and their emotions and what they say to me. And of course, within like 15 years, I was totally lost, believing everything people told about myself, lost in the mirror room of life. And I remember around that time, meeting Miguel around that time. And I had never read the Four Agreements.
What?
I
So
didn't.
I do
Well,
want to
this is
talk.
later. So
Uh,
15 years later, I'm in college, just
so
graduated in college.
how many years ago?
I met Miguel.
Yeah.
I met him in 96, 97.
Oh, so that's like I don't even know if the Four Agreements was published, was it?
No, it hadn't. Well, I think it was published in 97. I hadn't seen it before.
Right.
And I remember I got invited to this house and I walked in and there was this man sitting in a chair and he was just beaming. He had the biggest smile. And I saw his smile and I just felt so familiar to be around him. Something felt familiar. And after the class, someone introduced us and I remember staring at him and his eyes just looked at me. And I remember the way he looked at me was the way I looked at myself in that mirror. There was this presence. I felt like I recognized something and I didn't totally understand at the time, but it sort of awakened that part of me that was like, hey, you forgot yourself. You forgot what you were. You forgot who you were. You started looking outside for answers. And of course, the outside is going to tell you what they think about you. The outside is going to tell you who you should be, who you aren't, who you are, what you're good at, what you're not good at. And I believed all of it because I had no reason not to. And here's this like man not saying a single word. And I'm having the feeling like, oh my God, like I remember, but I have all these years of believing so many stories that it was a challenge. It was a huge challenge to sort of question everything I had believed about myself until that point. And that sort of started a beautiful friendship, a beautiful uh, teaching relationship, a beautiful, so many things sorry, I keep hitting this mic. So many beautiful awakenings after awakenings until this a point where it's like, okay, finally, I don't need someone to tell me for the thousandth, for the millionth time what I am. It comes down to believing it, to really believing it. And sometimes we doubt ourselves so much because the world is so strong at getting us to believe things that we forget who we are. We forget what we are. And I don't know if that answers part of your question.
No, that answers really both the question I had and my next question. It made me want to pause though. At the very end there, you said you don't need to hear for the millionth time what you are. And it reminded me of what we were talking about earlier, of that attempt to describe that which is undescribable, right? And I feel like we could say we're that force. I'm that force that allows me to move, that allows me to talk, that same force that allows you to listen and decode what I'm saying. And I'm responsible for what I say, and you're responsible for what you understand. But that awareness and that force, everything I'm saying right now is just symbols to try to help you, because you speak the same language as me, point at that which is beyond the symbols itself. And that is also what we are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, it's not about the words anymore.
Right.
It's about the feeling, because the words are just like carriers. It's like the colors you choose or the paintbrush or even what it looks like isn't as important as the way it feels to paint it
So let me ask this then, because I
for
have,
me.
yeah, no, I understand. For me, when I first felt that blissful, just, I mean, beyond blissful, it's just, again, beyond words, that feeling of just unconditional love that you're connected to God, the divine, whatever you want to call that. When I came back, my first instinct was to want to share that with others.
Hmm.
How do you share that with people who are living right here, other than to try to put it into words to point them to that?
Well, for me, that's easy. And I learned that through trial and error. But for me, it's easy in the sense that there's nothing to share really. Sometimes we share because we want to convince somebody that what I did was great, or convince somebody that you should do this too. Or
But that wasn't my
sometimes,
instinct. My
I'm
instinct
not
was I
saying it's
want
about you.
everybody
I'm
to
saying
feel.
sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, I get that, but the feeling of I want everyone to be able to
Yeah.
experience
And that's
this.
the other side of the coin is I feel so good. I want someone to feel this. And what I learned is that we don't have to say anything. We just go home and live our life and we just enjoy our life because people don't know we went through some amazing experience. People don't know that we felt some amazing love or healed something or overcame some past trauma. They don't know. All they see is the same person they've seen. But then you come home and you live your life and you just enjoy the little things now. You enjoy making your cup of coffee in the morning because you're just present and you're like, I'm alive. And I'm so happy to make this coffee. You bring them the coffee. They ask you about what you got planned for today, and you tell them what you have planned today. There's 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 no reason to have a conversation, but then they're like, God, you feel amazing to be around. Like what changed? Oh, I had this amazing experience. And then they say, well, tell me about it. And then there's an invitation
Uh,
to start sharing. They may not understand because they don't have the experience. It's like when you try and share an experience to someone, it's like someone saying what death is like. They can tell you what it's like and what happens, but it's just a concept to you or an idea to you until you have the experience. Until then, your imagination can visualize it and say, okay, that makes perfect sense. And I can visualize it and experience it in my imagination, but it's still not the real experience of experiencing it. You can describe what unconditional love feels like and share it as you're ex- explaining it, and someone might be able to feel your unconditional love. Maybe it does something to them where they allow themselves to feel that unconditional love. And then it's really them having love for themselves because there was something in the way that wasn't allowing themselves to feel that. But in sort of surrendering for a moment and feeling love, it's really them undoing something in that moment. So I guess to your point, we get excited. We want people to have this experience, but not everyone's going to understand. And sometimes they start asking so many questions to explain this, or they doubt that. And it's really easy to get stuck trying to defend yourself or um, trying to explain something that really there's no words for it. It's an experience. It's a feeling. And the best way to share it is to share it with your feeling, you know?
By
It's
example.
like your words by example, by living your life. To me, that was the greatest way to share it with family and friends, is just live my life.
Mhm.
And then all of a
Yeah,
sudden they're like, okay, I see what you're doing now. I didn't understand before.
right.
The words you said or the ideas or the concepts, it, people become defensive because if we're asking someone to change and they don't want to change, it's easy for someone to become defensive because why does someone else have to change because we changed?
Right.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
No, and in fact, it makes what you said is basically has been my experience. You said, it's been trial and error, and then you articulated all of that. And that's been my experience. I don't know that I've experienced it enough to have articulated it as well as you just did, but that you pretty much mapped onto my experience of trying to share that feeling of bliss from the moment that I felt it until now. I mean, yeah, that's been my conclusion as well, is lead by example. I mean, that's all you can do. I liked the part where you said people can open you up, invite you into, then you can tell the story in such a way where they're receptive to it rather than defensive against it because they've explicitly asked you,
Hmm.
why do
Yeah,
you feel so good to be around? you know?
exactly. And that's the thing about being around other people, not just like-minded people, but other people that are living their life either with integrity or living their life with an open heart, living their life with awareness, with common sense. You know,
Exactly.
it's like we give each other the freedom to learn from each other, to help
Mhm.
each other, to inspire each other instead of pushing each other down or selfishness or the competitiveness.
Oh, that's exactly
Uh,
why I love hearing other people's stories. It's like I know it's just a story, but everything you just described is why I love sharing my story, but also hearing other people's stories. Not just about my story, that's just a story, but I like to share it. And I also like to hear your story. It's a bonding experience for me.
and sometimes we can come home from a workshop or a trip, and we come home and we're just beaming. And people can say, "Well, you're acting so weird, why are you so different?" And it's like, I don't know, I'm just so happy, but it's in them saying, "Why are you acting so weird?" That's it's like that temptation to believe that you're doing something wrong again,
Mhm.
and you come home and you're so happy. And then the outside world is say, "Hey, you're different." And it's like, yes, I feel great. I feel amazing. I feel happy to be myself. And the world wants to try and push you back into who you were because other people want to recognize themselves in you also. And they used to know who they were with who you used to be, but they don't know who you are with who you are now. And so sometimes people are trying to put a mask on you or trying to get you to change because they want to control their experience. And the one way to control their experience is to control the people around them
Right.
very subtly. Sometimes it's not intentional.
Right.
Sometimes it just comes from,
Their
you
own
know,
conditioning.
yeah, something's pushing them to change a little bit.
Mhm.
And it's pushing up against, they're feeling anxious or feeling uncertain or feeling off center a little bit or being pushed towards the center, but it scares a lot of people, even people that sign up for trips sometimes, you know, and they have an opportunity to let something go, something that's been painful in their life that they can't seem to let go of. Sometimes people do something that they find unforgivable in themselves because of shame or guilt, that they hold on to it and hold on to it, and it drives, the feeling in their life. And then they come into a workshop and it's like, okay, here's an opportunity to let go of it. Well, it's really scary sometimes for someone to let go of something that has been an identifier in their life for so long. Who
Right.
am I without this? Yes, it brings pain. Yes, it brings suffering, but I know who I am. If I let it go, I don't know who I am. And that's kind of the point. But there's a lot of fear in not knowing who you are because people are afraid of the unknown. But what I come to realize is that the unknown is like part of the truth. Everything's always changing.
Incredibly well said. Incredibly well said. Yeah, thanks. I mean, when you were speaking there, it's like even anxiety itself can become an identity for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And they don't even need anything to be anxious about. It's just the anxiety itself is their identifier. I
Yeah.
have anxiety, you know, and then that drives all of their decision making. And then they struggle to be happy. Well, you're choosing to identify with nervousness or anxiety or basically a fear-based emotion. How can you expect to feel joy or happiness when you're basing your identity in fear?
Mhm.
It's,
And there's a whole spectrum, and there's different degrees,
right,
you
right.
know, and there's different circumstances, and everyone has a different way of dealing with it. And for me, I realized that I saw life through a certain point of view for so long, I didn't even consider that I could see life from a different point of view, or that it was possible to make that point of view um, a daily experience. That just waking up in the morning and just being like, I'm just going to enjoy this day. It seemed like I was lying to myself because it was a concept, until little by little you sort of shift and it's like, I forgot who I used to be because I replaced one behavior with another behavior. It's like we practice all these bad habits. It's like our personality is based on habits and repetition, that even the way we identify the world is a result of a groove that we repeated. It's like I love that story. It's an old story, but I've heard it recently. Is like you watch, like in my parents' backyard, there's deer that come and graze, and if you look at their backyard, there's a hill. There's these paths that they've carved into the hillside, but they've carved those because they walk the same path every time they come down to eat the flowers. But it's like we repeat these things every single day until we have these grooves, like a record, that we play the same song every single day. But we don't realize if we let the grass regrow and fills up those grooves, we can choose another way of navigating life and create a new groove, a new way of walking down, a new song, a new way of dancing, something that's more aligned with like who we are, not who we thought we were supposed to be. And I remember Miguel saying something to me, and it made sense when he said it, but it took me so long to like experience it. But he was like, you don't have to be someone for someone else. You don't have to be someone for someone else. That made sense. And after I understood that, he's like, and you don't have to be someone for yourself. You don't have to be someone for yourself. And that one hit hard because I realized so many times we try and be perfect, or we try and be right, or we try and fit in, or we try and get love, or we try and elicit a certain response. We're trying to be something for someone, but then we do the same thing with ourselves. We try and elicit happiness from ourselves. We don't want to judge ourselves. So we're constantly doing things so we don't judge ourselves.
Yeah,
And then
no,
we judge ourselves and it's
that's
powerful. But then we get to a point where we don't have to be something for ourselves.
right. It
We don't have to
reminds
be
me of don't
perfect.
take anything personally, but it's like when you hear that, the first thought is I don't want to take other people's judgments and the outside world's judgments personally. But when you are successful with that, and when you digest that, the real challenge comes when it's don't take yourself personally.
Yep. It's the biggest challenge
Yeah,
because it's you.
yeah. You
How do
can't
you not
escape
take
yourself.
yourself personally?
Right.
It's you.
Mm.
But then you realize everything you tell yourself To a certain degree, someone told you. To a certain degree.
Right.
And many times you tell yourself things based on things you heard. It's like, you see a friend gossiping about another friend as a kid, and then you realize, hey, if they gossip about that guy, what happens when I'm not here?
Right.
Are they gossip? And then you start to become self-conscious about everything you do,
Right.
thinking like, at any point someone could do that to me. But then we start, you know, really listening and judging every time we do something. We start to become a critic because we're afraid of someone gossiping about us.
Mhm.
We start to take ourselves personally. But you're totally right. That's the biggest challenge. But the reward is when you don't take yourself personally, when you stop judging yourself, when you listen to yourself without taking the bait, and judging yourself or having the reactions, applying that to anyone outside of you is effortless. Because if you could do it to yourself, you can do it to anyone because you're aware that that's someone else. You could walk away from someone else if you're not happy with them, but you can't walk away from yourself. You're with yourself all the time. And
Yeah.
so it's easy to blame everyone else for your problems. It's his fault, it's her fault, it's their fault, it's God's fault, it's life's fault, it's the government, it's Democrats, it's Republicans, it's everyone else's fault. And at a
Corporation.
certain point, we have to take accountability for the things that we do in our life and
Yeah.
accountability for how we treat ourselves
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
emotional quality of our life.
Yeah. And that's a result of the agreements that we make. It's like you you mentioned the government or corporations or whatever. It's like, what is our role in that agreement with? I mean, you don't even have to talk about it. And then that's an agreement to wipe it out. Or if it does come up in conversation, that's not really something that sparks me. It does, you know what I'm saying? Like you can say that, you know what I mean? But you, complaining about it is your relationship with that which you're complaining about.
Yeah. And in my life, I realize it's action, reaction, action, reaction. We do something. It doesn't mean the reaction is going to be right away. Sometimes the reaction could be 10 years from now. We don't know that, but there's always some sort of like reaction to everything. But when we do things from a place that it feels right to us, not right and I feel justified in doing this, but it just feels like this is the common sense right thing to do. We don't feel guilty for doing it. There's no reason to judge ourselves for doing it because we know it's coming from a place of generosity, whether it's generosity for ourselves or for someone else. It's not coming from selfishness or destructiveness. It's coming from wanting to help either ourselves or someone else. And that's how we sort of quiet that inner judge because sometimes we know we shouldn't do something, but we do it anyway. And it gives us a good excuse to judge ourselves. But then if we catch ourselves and say, okay, I did it, I own it, I did it. But sometimes we don't even want to admit to ourselves that we made a mistake. We want to lie to ourselves and lie to everyone, you know, and try and convince ourselves that we weren't wrong.
The denial system.
Yeah. But it's like we can own and admit our mistakes, at least to ourselves.
Right.
Some people are afraid to admit that because then they have to accept the fact that we make mistakes. But once we own it, we disarm that judge in a way. And we become, it's easier just to work and walk and talk with more integrity because we're not afraid. Many times we're afraid of how someone's going to respond. You know, sometimes we're people pleasers and we're afraid of saying no to someone. And we take on so much in our life that we know is bad for us, that we know it has an effect on our health or our happiness or our livelihood, but we do it because we don't want to disappoint someone. We're so afraid of taking them personally or taking our guilt personally. But sometimes we have to learn to stand up for ourselves and say no, but we can say no in a way that is no that comes from a place of love. where
Right.
someone understands where we're coming from. And instead of saying no and then saying it in a way that someone reacts to it, we could say no in a way that uplifts people. And I think that's what is really missing. People are sometimes afraid to be honest with someone. And so they say no in a text, or they say no through someone else, or they are so nervous they say no with all this like chaotic energy because they're just afraid to be accountable for what they need in their life.
Right.
And if we can just be a little bit more honest with each other, we can open up this communication that can just heal so many things.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. In fact, I had two different things come up as you were talking there. One, the you mentioned selfish, and there's this fine line between selfish and self-love.
Mhm.
And to me, it comes down to self-love is the idea that I can only give what I already have, but my intention is still to uplift,
Mhm.
versus a selfish intention is one that puts yourself above others or above some other idea or some other species, even whatever it may be. I just want to hear you expand
Yeah, I
on.
like that.
You like that?
Yeah. You know, there's so many ways to talk about this, but I think anyone, whether someone's healing from addiction, or someone's healing from some sort of trauma, or someone's on a personal journey where they're trying to change their life and make their life better, and they make choices that they know are going to be helpful to them and improve their life. Sometimes it's an inconvenience to other people, or sometimes other people take it personally. Hey, they don't want to spend time with me. And so other people might say, hey, you're acting really selfish. But it sometimes, not all the time, sometimes it comes from a place of hurt. Someone feels hurt and they're calling someone else selfish, but that's not really helping the person who's really trying to take accountability in their life. Sometimes, if you're trying to really do something in your life, you might feel guilty or say what you're doing is selfish, but it's not true. Self love and self respect is extremely important. But there is a line where it becomes selfishness, where it becomes greed, it becomes control under the guise of self love or self respect. So sometimes we do certain things that help us, that make us better people, and we feel all this power because for the first time we're not sad or in pain, but we don't want to lose it. That we become obsessed with not losing this feeling, that we start doing things that aren't coming from a place of generosity anymore. They come from a place of protection, of control. And that's a totally different way of seeing life. And there's a fine line where we operate from a place of fear instead of a place of generosity or love. And I think you see that everywhere in life. Sometimes people get a lot of money all of a sudden and they're like, oh my God, I can heal all this stuff. And then all of a sudden they realize, oh my God, I could lose all this money. And they start being really protective over that money and they start making choices differently. And so sometimes people become afraid. And someone gave me the best piece of advice. Like I remember I was in a casino with someone. They sat down and they're like, "Here, sit down with me. I don't want you to walk away. Just sit with me and watch me play one hand because I want to visit with you." And I sat down and they won this like massive hand. And they looked at me and says, "Well, here's a couple chips. I just wanted to give you something. I want you to always be generous. Every time something comes to you, like it just did with me, I want you to be generous. Always be generous. Never just take everything. If you get something, give something." And I really loved that advice. And I sort of laughed that I was getting some beautiful lesson in the casino, but you never know where you're going to get a lesson. And I loved it because sometimes you become so happy for no reason. And then you want to protect that happiness, but the best thing you do is share that happiness to make someone else happy. And in making someone else happy, it fulfills you even more
Yep, that's exactly what I was
because
about to say.
other people think a new car is going to make them happy,
Mhm.
or money is going to make them happy, or a new relationship is going to make them happy. And the best happiness comes when you're happy for no reason. For no reason. You just are happy. And your mind wants to search for a reason why you're happy, but sometimes you realize I'm just happy. I'm out of my own way for a moment. And it goes back to sports. We talked about that centered of feeling connected to something larger than yourself. To me, that's the zone. That's being in the zone,
Yeah,
or
flow
that's in the
state.
flow. All
Yeah,
these words, flow
yeah,
state.
right, right,
Flow state to me is just you're authentic.
right.
It's just you're being yourself. You're you're not getting in your own way. And sometimes, we try so hard that in trying so hard, our trying gets in the way. But, it's part of the learning process. We try, we try, we try, we learn, and then all of a sudden we just like get so frustrated we let go. And it happens. Or sometimes we're looking for a relationship, we're trying and trying, we're so frustrated. And then we just stop looking and boom, we find a relationship. And sometimes once the, the mind, the control, the fear, all that stuff just disappears for one moment, something magical happens because we're connected to ourselves in that moment. And it's beautiful.
100%.
And learning to live that way is the goal. It's like this whole thing. What's it about? It's about living your life that way, the best that you can. And life always has its ups and downs. It's like a roller coaster.
Mm.
But roller coasters, it's exciting. And we don't have to be afraid of the problems. We just need to find our own solutions. You find your solution. You find your way, not someone else's way. You find your way. And that's what makes the difference.
Yeah. Um, that first of all, that was beautiful. Another thought I had based on what we were saying right before that little blurb, you had mentioned like we had both mentioned at different points in this conversation the difficulty in trying to use words to get at the truth. And then, we've used metaphors and trying to talk about some of these concepts or functions that we're talking about. And it hit me while you were saying something a few minutes ago that Don Miguel has one of the most beautiful metaphors, in my opinion, when it comes to truth. And I think this is actually from the Four Agreements, or at least one of his earlier books. He says the truth is like a scalpel. You got to cut the lies out. And if you're identifying with lies, and if you're identifying with fear, that truth does hurt, but only from the place of identifying with the lies and the fear. Because once you extract that, what is left and what is natural is love and is bliss. And that's the truth. And that's the feeling. But yes, cutting the lies out might hurt. You hear people say truth hurts. Well, it only hurts when you're identifying with the lies and the fear. Yes, it's true if you're living from that state, but the truth is actually the most beautiful, blissful, joyful, amazing thing there is, So it's a, yin yang balancing act sort of thing going on with that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's very true. And Don Jose has this beautiful expression called doing an autopsy on yourself, which I love. When he started saying this, I was like, God, it's so beautiful because it's like the scalpel is like the point of view of a doctor. But so many times we take a scalpel from the point of view of a patient. It's like we go into a past memory that we're really trying to look at, but we're looking at that memory from the point of view of the victim of that memory, as opposed to looking at that memory as a witness or an observer, seeing what really happened. And so when he said that, I was like, oh yeah, we kind of look at ourselves as a doctor, like a real doctor, like the original, you look at those two snakes wrapped around the staff. It's
Mm.
like you look at this observer that's there to heal. And so you open up your own wounds to go back into a pain that you've been holding on to, but you see it objectively, that if you can see it objectively without reacting to it with the same emotion from that moment, you give that memory the chance to release all the emotion that's trapped. It's almost like a memory has this emotion inside, this energy trapped inside of it. And then that memory has like energy, but that energy is you. It's like we're energy. And part of our energy is trapped inside this memory. And that energy wants to come back to us. It wants to come back, but the memory, we're pushing that memory away because we don't want to feel. But at the same time, we want it back because it's us. We're trapped inside of it. So we take that scalpel so we can get the energy out, but there's all this emotion that was trapped. But we cut it, you see what happened, and you just feel. You feel all the emotion that was trapped there, like a ghost trying to get back to the light. But we're so afraid of the ghosts that we just want to push them away. But they just want to return to where they came from. And so for me, I realized that we all have these like ghosts, we call them whatever, demons and ghosts and memories and trauma that we hide from. But to feel whole, we kind of have to look at everything. And at a certain point, I sat down with myself and I could just hear all the noise. I heard all the noise. All the noise is all like all the voices talking simultaneously. And it's so easy to get overwhelmed by all those voices. But then at a certain point, you just listen to them. You just listen to them objectively. And you realize, wow, it's always been like this. And just to listen, you feel so much compassion, so much love. And that noise starts to get quieter and quieter. It only gets louder when we start to pay attention to one voice and start to believe one of those voices. Because the moment we start to believe it, that voice, becomes present. We start battling, we start fighting. But we put down the sword and we just have compassion for ourselves.
Yeah. No, what you're saying right now reminds me of, you know, I don't know which book this is, but they talk about how redeeming the parasite, and I think that point of view of an observer, and it's not even necessarily, I mean, you can still interact and talk to it like, but it's more of a, I recognize that you're just trying to protect me. I don't agree with what you're trying to tell me right now, but it's almost like giving it that attention will quiet it down from the point of view of I don't agree with you, but I hear you. It just wants to be heard. And I recognize you want to just protect me. But that's kind of how that's like you kind of playing its game almost to sneak in there and say, no, I'm actually the one in control here, not you.
Right. Yeah. And there's a beautiful balance where you realize what Miguel calls the parasite becomes a friend.
The ally.
A friend to who, though?
Right.
Right? A friend to who? A friend to the real energy, which is you.
Taming the
Because
wild horse.
you're also the friend. It's
Mhm.
like you're both. It goes back to my experience as a child. What's true, the voice or the energy? They're both. I'm both. But one is like a reflection. It's
Right.
learned. Everything that voice says,
The
it
smoky
learned.
mirror.
Yeah. But that voice can suppress and block, or it could just become like the most beautiful um, friend to help express. So it either gets in the way, and by getting out of the way, it becomes the artist.
It's a clean
It becomes
mirror.
the artist of life.
Right.
It becomes the voice. It becomes the one that can express that feeling.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So I just want to throw some words out here just
Yeah.
to see what your connotation is and just hear you expand on some of these ideas, concepts.
And I also feel like I'm starting to lose my voice. So maybe I have like
No worries.
15 more
Yeah,
minutes.
we're almost at the end anyway. But I do want to hear how you would describe, and this can be short. I don't want it to be like a long philosophical, drawn out thing because, again, I think simplicity is at the heart of Toltec lifestyle. But how would you describe it to somebody who's never heard of the Toltec way of being? How would you describe it in, as short as succinctly as possible?
Well, my point of view is it's the point of view of an artist.
Mhm.
And that's what I resonated with the most because it just made perfect sense to me. And at the heart of everything is the recognition that we have one life. And in that life, we're a creator and we're creating the experience of our life. And this whole philosophy and wisdom and everything I've learned has reminded me that we're accountable for everything we say, everything we do. And why not use every choice, every word, everything we do to create a life that we just enjoy so much because we never know when it's going to end. It could end tomorrow. And if you knew that tomorrow was your last day, how would you live today? Would you complain? Would you spend your last day complaining about everything that happened to you, or would you just enjoy this last moment? So I think all the wisdom from my perspective of not only Toltec wisdom, but all wisdom in the world is to recognize where we come from and how to live a life with awareness and not live a life based on what you are told and just live blindly, but to open your eyes, to be aware, and take responsibility for the way you live your life.
Yeah, that's perfect. Last question. Um, do you believe in soulmates?
Not necessarily. I uh I feel no, not really. And when you just said this, I had a memory. I was like, do I want to say this? But there are so many times where I've been at a workshop where I gave someone a hug, just a hug, that I just let someone know that they're loved. And someone would say, "Oh my God, we're meant to be together. I've never felt love like that before. Like you're my soulmate. We're destined to be together. We're meant to have kids together." And I was like, "I don't think so. Uh, you know, that love you felt is you. It's just unconditional love. It has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with you. That sometimes people maybe have never felt love in their life and they feel love for the first time and they think it's the person. I'm meant to be with this person because I've never felt love like this. And so they tell themselves a story that it's this person that I'm meant to be with. And sometimes we might love someone so much, but the person doesn't necessarily want to be with us back. And sometimes it's really heartbreaking because we want something so bad, but someone else doesn't want it. And maybe we're meant to be together, but it doesn't happen. It's okay. But I think sometimes soulmates, the idea of soulmates is like we're meant to be together. And someone's always feels like, well, if we're meant to be together, then I need to compromise something to be with you. So sometimes we're around people and it feels so natural. It feels so natural to be around. Like I just feel so easy to be around you. It's beautiful. To find someone like that is amazing. That you can just be yourself with someone and someone can be themselves around you. That's like an ideal relationship. But I don't know if I believe in soulmates. I believe that everyone becomes a piece in our puzzle that helps us learn about ourselves. And the only real soulmate we have is life itself. That's the only real person that we're totally connected to is ourself. And
You
the
are,
only thing I want to say about that, I don't want to extend this longer because I have a tendency to talk, but it's like I kind of lost my point,
And
but
it,
it was like this. It was like this feeling where we find someone that we love so much that we're willing to compromise ourselves for the sake
mm,
of a relationship. The relationship becomes more important than ourselves. That we compromise ourselves to make someone else happy, and we sacrifice little pieces of ourselves to make someone else happy or to save a relationship. But ultimately, and I love this is again goes back to Jose. It's like the wedding vows. If you really listen to them, they really apply to yourself. Till death do us part. Anything can happen in a relationship. Someone can die. What happened to the vows? Yes, you stayed together until one of you left, but really, you're with yourself until you die. And this is the most important person to take care of. And it's not selfishness. Once you love yourself, you can take that into any relationship and make that relationship amazing.
yeah.
So
No,
I don't know.
something that I've heard all of the
That's my jumbled answer
family
to
say is
soulmates.
you are the love of your life. Yeah. That's what it boils down to. Um, I guess one companion question to that is, do you believe monogamy is natural for humans?
I think that's an individual question.
I think
You
so
know,
too. Yeah.
I think I think every species on this planet deals with it differently.
Hmm.
And I think there's reasons why certain animals have mates for life and don't. But I think as a species, you know, we have the ability to make a decision, and I think everyone ultimately has to decide what works for them.
Yeah. No, I
And
agree.
I think people that choose to be in an open relationship, I just think it really puts them face to face with generosity and not taking things personally. So if that's what people want to experience, then I think they have every right. But I don't know if one way is more healthy or
Natural. Yeah.
programmed
Right.
into. The only thing I think that's programmed is to perpetuate children, because without children, the species doesn't continue. So I don't think life cares. I think as long as children, babies, continue the human race, humanity will continue. And so I think it's up to an individual. I don't
No,
have a personal.
no, I couldn't agree more. And just to give you like an understanding of why I feel like this is an important question and why asked the last several people I've interviewed as my last question is, and I really felt like my last podcast guest articulated his point very well. And it's really, I agreed with him, but I couldn't articulate it as well as he articulated it. And it's not really for me about monogamy or polyamory or whatever. It's about sacred versus profane. And as somebody who, I'm a big advocate for cannabis. That's something that is profaned in a lot of instances, right? And I'm not a fan of that. Sex is profaned in a lot of instances. I'm not a fan of that. And some people automatically associate polyamory with profaning sex. I don't do that, but at the same time, I understand that the reason that's a common misconception is because that is commonly the result of polyamorous relationships that aren't, like you said, not taking things personally, not being clear in their communication, leaving things to assumptions. So it isn't what's important for me is life is sacred, and therefore cannabis and sex and a lot of these things that people profane could be redeemed as sacred if it was treated differently by the actual person who's merging or interacting with this activity or whatever it may be.
For sure. I think people are free to live their life, but I think it comes down to respect. I think if one person decides to do something, but it's disrespectful to everyone around them, then I think it could be seen as, hey, this is, harmful, you know, and it's looked down upon. But sometimes when things are done in such a respectful way, you can't help but say, okay, like it's not hurting me, it's not hurting anyone else. But it comes back to what people believe. Sometimes people have such strong beliefs that they see something that they don't agree with, that they want that to disappear because it butts up against what they find profane, and it makes them uncomfortable. And instead of dealing with their own discomfort, they want to make everyone else wrong. And we see that all the time in life. But when I think it comes down to, like you said, it's sacred. I think birthing life is sacred.
100%.
And if it's done, it's not always done with that sort of, in a sacrimonious way.
Right,
It
exactly.
happens in all different ways, the
Right.
whole spectrum,
Right.
but, it's like, life is life.
Mhm.
And there was things I was going to say, but I decided, to leave them in a conversation for another time. But, but I agree. It's like we can make things so complicated when we start to take in all these points of views, and then we realize all the points of views are right. And at a certain point, we have to take responsibility for our life
Right.
and do it in a way that's respectful. Do it in a way that comes from a place of respect. And that's the way I see it. And I
Yeah.
think that's part of any wisdom, Toltec wisdom, Buddhism, any religion. I think at the heart of it is wanting to connect. At the heart, wanting to connect and make life sacred. It gets distorted.
Right. I was about to say religion is another one of those things that is it supposedly is in essence sacred, but you see it profaned and there's holy wars, and it's like the most beautiful aspects of life can be profaned, and that's why for me what's important is just remaining in love with life, and that will make every part of life sacred.
I agree. So, with that being said,
Beautiful conversation. Thank you so
live your
much.
life, make it sacred to you, make it mean something to you. And that meaning is changing all the time. But just love yourself, be present with yourself, enjoy yourself, and then share that wherever you go.
And that will make you rich. Your experience of life will be very rich doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome
So
stuff.
thank you for your time. Thank you for reaching out.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Love.
I got that. Yeah, heard them call me conscious. I ain't think about it honestly. My thoughts too deep to process, so I do this all unconsciously. Finally feeling God bless. Got 'em woke up dropping prophecy. Don't take it out of context. Just before, I swear they always sleep. Now they catch the message, yeah. Bet that every song is deep. It's levels in each concept. But I can't just never mono theme. I'm trying to lead this flock for the cause, not the following. People upon a partner, and I wonder why they drawn to me. Once upon a time, I thought to follow up a dream. Draw life about these lines, nothing twice about these schemes, and like thrice about these insights. What I write is like a blueprint for you to comprehend life. That's light, I reckon, make you shine. Never dim it down, even if you live surrounded where everybody vision clouded. Remember, staying down ain't quite as good as getting out. It said, remember, staying down ain't quite as, ay. If you believed, yeah. Many doubted it was hard for them to think. Somehow I'm finally getting out of that's it. Usually, yeah, they vision clouded, but as you can see by now, we finally getting out there, writing truth, spreading love. Tell me how you feel about it. Got this music from above, this how I know I'm getting out there, writing truth, spreading love. Tell me how you feel about it. Got this music from above, this how I, ay.